SciFi HFY. The Empire had existed for thousands of years. It ruled over stars, moons, and countless planets. In every corner of the galaxy, people whispered its name with fear and respect. To the Empire, power was everything. It had never lost a war, never been challenged, and never imagined that any small world could stand against it. When the Empire's explorers first reached the edge of the Sol system, they found Earth, an isolated planet filled with life, art, and curiosity. At first, the Empire's envoys spoke with pride, offering Earth a chance to join their order. They promised security, trade, and access to the stars. But behind every offer, there was a demand for obedience. Humanity was told to bow, to follow imperial law, and to send tribute to a distant throne that no human had ever seen. At first, Earth's leaders tried diplomacy. They listened, studied, and debated. But as the Empire's true nature became clear, so did humanity's answer. No. Earth refused to surrender its freedom. The message sent back to the Empire was polite but firm. Humanity would not become a subject world. That single word, no, echoed across the stars like a challenge. The Empire's ambassadors were stunned. In their long history, only a few civilizations had ever dared to defy them. All of those worlds had been wiped out. So when Earth refused, the Empire's pride turned into fury. The Emperor himself, sitting on his great throne under the golden banners of conquest, declared Earth an enemy of the state. The declaration of war was broadcast across the galaxy. The message was clear. Let all worlds see what happens to those who defy the Empire. To most alien species watching the broadcast, it felt inevitable. Earth was small, young, and inexperienced compared to the vast power of the Empire. The galaxy expected the war to be over in days, maybe hours. Many even felt sorry for the humans. Others mocked them for their stubbornness, calling them the primitive species that thought it could stand against the stars. But while the galaxy laughed, something very different was happening on Earth. Instead of fear, there was focus. Humanity had been preparing for something like this for a long time. Governments across the world, once divided by politics and borders, came together with a unity no one had ever seen before. Scientists, engineers, and defense experts worked in secret. They met in underground facilities, under the oceans, and even on the far side of the moon. For decades, small hints of alien technology had fallen into human hands. Crashed probes, abandoned ships, and fragments of unknown metals had been studied quietly. What others thought was human curiosity was, in truth, a quiet race to understand the galaxy's weapons. And now, as the Empire's armada moved closer, those studies became the foundation for Earth's survival. Every nation contributed. Old enemies shared knowledge. Rival companies gave up patents for the greater good. It wasn't just about defending borders anymore. It was about defending home, the only home humanity had ever known. People worked without sleep. Factories ran without pause. Scientists pushed their minds beyond the limits of known physics. Still, no one pretended it would be easy. The Empire's power was beyond imagination. Its ships were larger than cities. Its weapons could burn oceans and break mountains. To fight against such a force seemed impossible. But that impossibility didn't stop humanity. It fueled them. There was a saying that began to spread quietly through Earth's communication networks, whispered in homes and control rooms alike, "We have nowhere else to go." And that truth made every human, from soldier to scientist, more determined. They weren't fighting for conquest or glory. They were fighting to protect their families, their oceans, their skies, and the fragile blue planet that had given them everything. While the Empire's fleets prepared, Earth fell silent in the eyes of the galaxy. News channels from other worlds called it the calm before destruction. Reporters said that Earth had gone dark, that no new messages were coming out, that maybe the humans were already surrendering. But that silence was not fear. It was focus. Inside hidden command centers beneath mountain ranges and under cities, thousands of people watched their screens, waiting. Satellite networks formed a shield of information around the planet. Massive energy reactors were brought online, drawing power from the Earth's core and the sun itself. And deep in orbit, behind veils of stealth technology, strange new ships waited, silent, invisible, and unknown to the rest of the galaxy. These were not ships built for show. They were built for one purpose: to end any threat before it reached Earth's skies. They were smaller than Imperial battleships, but faster, smarter, and alive with human creativity. No one outside of Earth knew what was being prepared. Even most of the people on the planet didn't know the full truth. Only a small circle of leaders and scientists understood the scale of what they were about to unleash. In one of the underground control rooms, an older general stood before a massive display showing the Empire's incoming fleet. It stretched across the stars like a moving wall of metal and light. The general didn't look afraid. He simply said, "They think this will be another easy victory. Let's show them what happens when you underestimate a species that refuses to give up." Every word carried the weight of humanity's history, its wars, struggles, inventions, and resilience. Humans had fought impossible battles before. They had rebuilt cities from ashes, crossed oceans, and turned chaos into discovery. Now they faced a new kind of enemy, but their spirit was the same. Across the planet, ordinary people went on with their lives, pretending not to worry, though everyone knew what was coming. Children still went to school. Farmers still tended their fields. Musicians still played and poets still wrote. It wasn't denial, it was defiance. The world would not stop living just because someone decided it should. And so, the Empire's countdown to invasion began. In the dark corners of the galaxy, smaller civilizations watched nervously. Some hoped Earth would fall quickly, afraid that any resistance might bring the Empire's wrath upon them too. Others secretly hoped the humans would somehow win, if only to prove that even the greatest tyrannies could break. Days before the invasion, the Empire sent one last message to Earth. It wasn't a warning. It was a statement of arrogance. The message read, "Submit now, and your planet will be spared destruction. Resist, and you will cease to exist." Earth's reply was a single sentence: "We do not surrender." That transmission lasted only a few seconds, but it reached every Imperial channel. It was replayed again and again by alien networks across the stars. Some laughed at it. Others admired it. But all agreed on one thing: humanity had just signed its death sentence. As the Empire's fleets aligned for hyperspace entry, their commanders discussed the attack plan with smug certainty. The humans would not last an hour, they said. The war would be over before their first sunrise. But on Earth, the mood was different. There was no fear in the command rooms, only focus. Screens glowed softly as engineers checked final systems. Pilots prepared for launch. Technicians whispered quiet prayers. No one knew what would happen when the first Imperial ships arrived, but they all knew one thing: there was no turning back. The people of Earth were united not by power, but by purpose. Every action, every heartbeat was aimed toward survival. Somewhere in orbit, a scientist looked out at the stars and whispered, "They think they are coming to end us, but maybe they are coming to learn who we really are." Far away, the Imperial Armada began its jump toward the Sol system, confident and unstoppable, or so it thought. The war that would shake the galaxy had begun, and the first chapter was written not with weapons, but with the quiet strength of a planet that refused to kneel. When the Empire's fleet entered hyperspace, every world under its control celebrated in advance. News channels praised the Emperor's decision. Commentators spoke with certainty, saying that by the next cycle, Earth would either kneel or burn. No one doubted the outcome. To them, humanity was just another small species that had risen too fast and needed to be reminded of its place. But on Earth, people were not celebrating or panicking. They were preparing quietly, with purpose in every movement. There was no grand music, no dramatic speeches, just work, endless and focused. Across the continents, factories glowed through the night. Satellites launched one after another into orbit. Hidden bases came alive, powered by reactors that hummed deep underground. In every city, thousands volunteered to help. Some joined the defense teams, others worked as engineers, coders, or medics. Even artists and teachers found ways to help, spreading calm, organizing communities, keeping hope alive. Humanity had never been this united before. For the first time, every nation spoke with one voice. The Earth Defense Initiative, a global command created decades ago in secret, now revealed its full purpose. It wasn't just a military plan. It was a system that connected all human strength together. The minds of scientists, the courage of soldiers, the creativity of builders, and the unshakable will of ordinary people. No one pretended it was a fair fight. Everyone knew how powerful the Empire was. Their ships were older than some human civilizations, their weapons capable of destroying continents. The Empire had never faced defeat, but they had also never faced humanity. Inside one of the main command centers buried beneath the ice in Antarctica, rows of screens showed data from deep space. The approaching fleet looked like a moving storm, a cloud of metal, light, and power. Every hour the readings grew stronger. The ships were coming fast, yet despite what the galaxy believed, humanity wasn't defenseless. Over decades, scientists had reverse-engineered fragments of alien craft that had been found drifting or crashed long ago. They learned how to bend energy, how to hide ships in light, and how to interfere with advanced scanners. These discoveries were never shared publicly. The world had remained silent, pretending to be less advanced than it really was. That silence had been Earth's greatest weapon. Hidden far from the eyes of the Empire, new technologies had been built. Not for conquest, but for survival. Shield systems that could distort sensors, drones that could move faster than radar could track, and energy cores that drew power directly from solar radiation. Humans didn't have the size or numbers of the Empire, but they had something the Empire didn't understand: adaptability. When the first images of the Imperial fleet reached Earth's telescopes, there was a strange calm. Some people cried, others stood in silence. The sight of those ships, massive, endless, cold, would have broken the spirit of most worlds. But for humanity, it did the opposite. It reminded them why they had to fight. The leaders of Earth gathered through secure communication lines. There were no arguments, no politics. They all understood what was at stake. If we lose, one said quietly, human history ends here. No one disagreed. And so they decided that the planet itself would become their shield. Earth's defense network activated. The skies filled with invisible grids of satellites that formed a net of protection. Each one could relay energy, disrupt tracking, and even reflect attacks. On the ground, cities prepared shelters while defense units stood ready to launch. Submerged ships waited in the deep seas, and high above, silent orbital platforms powered up, each one capable of strikes the galaxy had never seen. But among all the technology and strategy, the true heart of Earth's defense was its people. Every scientist working in a lab knew that a single mistake could cost millions of lives. Every technician fixing circuits knew their work could mean the difference between survival and extinction. Every pilot understood that when the time came, they might not return. Yet no one ran. No one surrendered. On the surface, life continued. Farmers still harvested crops to feed those working underground. Children were told stories not of fear but of courage. Families stayed close, not because they were weak, but because they understood that love was the reason they were fighting at all. Humanity's strength had never come from power. It came from care, from connection, from the belief that every life mattered. Even as the Empire's ships drew closer, Earth's people stayed steady. They had seen storms before. They had faced disasters, wars, and impossible odds throughout history. This was just another challenge. Greater, yes, but not unbeatable. Inside a small research base on the far side of the moon, a group of scientists monitored the fleet's movements. Their data was transmitted back to Earth through silent quantum relays. Every coordinate, every energy reading was tracked. One scientist whispered, "They think they're hunting us, but they don't know we've already mapped every move they'll make." Still, no one underestimated the danger. Humanity knew what was coming, a wave of destruction unlike anything before. That understanding brought fear, but also clarity. There was no confusion, no hesitation. When you fight for everything you love, you find a kind of strength that cannot be measured. As the countdown to contact grew shorter, something unexpected happened across Earth. Messages began spreading online, simple ones, shared by ordinary people. We stand together. Protect our home. For Earth, no one ordered it. It wasn't propaganda. It was something deeper, a feeling that spread like light through the darkness. People who had never met from opposite sides of the planet felt connected. It was as if every heartbeat was part of the same rhythm. Meanwhile, the Empire's commanders grew confident. They monitored the silence from Earth and mistook it for fear. To them, it looked like the humans had already given up. Their analysts reported no major fleet movements, no defensive broadcasts. "They are frozen," one Imperial general said with a smirk. "They are waiting for mercy that will never come." But he was wrong. The humans weren't frozen. They were waiting for the perfect moment. The Empire didn't understand humanity's quietness. They were used to loud resistance, screaming, chaos, desperation. But Earth was different. Humanity's strength was in its patience, its ability to prepare while others underestimated it. On the night before the Empire's fleet would arrive in the Sol system, the sky over Earth was clear. Billions of people looked up at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, an army was coming to destroy them. Some whispered goodbyes. Others simply stood in silence. But not one person looked away. That night became known later as the Night of Resolve. It was the moment humanity accepted that it might not survive, and decided to fight anyway. In the command centers, the final checks were made. Energy shields hummed quietly as they stabilized. Hidden stations on Mars and the Moon synced their systems with Earth's core defenses. Every piece of technology was connected, forming a single web of power, and in that web was something the Empire could never understand: a human touch. Every system, every weapon, every satellite was guided by human instinct. Machines followed logic, but humans followed something deeper: hope. When dawn touched the horizon, Earth stood ready. From orbit to ocean, every defense was active, every signal silent but alive. The world waited, united in calm defiance. The Empire's fleet was now only hours away. And somewhere deep in the mountains, a quiet voice over the communication channel said what every human felt inside. They think we're weak because we love peace. But they'll learn that peace is not weakness, it's the strength that makes us fight harder than anyone else. No one answered. They didn't need to. Every person listening knew exactly what those words meant. In that moment, Earth was not just a planet. It was a promise that no matter how vast the universe became, there would always be one world that refused to bow. The silence continued, deep and steady. As the Empire's ships entered the edge of the solar system, the humans did not attack. They did not panic. They waited, patient and ready, like the calm before a great storm, because they knew something the Empire didn't. What was coming next would change the galaxy forever. The silence in space was heavy as the Empire's fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system. Thousands of ships, glowing with silver light, appeared out of hyperspace in perfect formation. They stretched as far as sensors could reach, like a wall of metal blocking the stars. The flagship alone was larger than any human city. Its engines burned bright, leaving trails of energy that shimmered across the void. Inside the Empire's command ships, the mood was proud and calm. Officers stood tall, confident that this mission would end quickly. To them, Earth was only a small blue planet with weak defenses and outdated technology. They believed that within hours the war would be over. "Begin the advance," the Imperial commander ordered. His voice was cold, distant. He looked down at the holographic display showing the solar system, a bright sun, a few planets, and the small dot labeled Earth. "Proceed to target. Eliminate resistance." The fleet moved forward. Thousands of ships aligned their paths toward the third planet from the sun. From the outside, it looked like an unstoppable force. But as the Empire's ships moved closer, something strange began to happen. Their sensors flickered for a moment, then stabilized. A few officers noticed the glitch but ignored it. Space interference was common during long-range travel. Yet the flickers continued. In one of the smaller ships, a young technician frowned at his readings. "Sir," he said carefully, "I'm getting signal distortion. The sensors are shifting." The officer above him waved a hand dismissively. "Ignore it. Earth has nothing that can affect Imperial scanners. Stay on course." But the distortions grew worse. Across multiple ships, the readings began to change. Objects appeared on radar, then vanished. Energy signals came and went like ghost lights. Some ships reported strange pulses coming from the asteroid belt, as if something was watching them. Still, the fleet pressed on. Meanwhile, on Earth, the defense command centers were silent but alive with focus. Operators watched the Imperial fleet's approach through hidden observation networks. Every movement, every energy fluctuation was being tracked. Deep under a mountain range, the lead operator whispered to her team, "They're entering range. Prepare Phase 1. In orbit around Mars, several small stations powered up quietly. They looked like harmless rocks or old satellites, but inside them were advanced systems created by human scientists, devices built to bend energy and distort space readings. Within seconds, the entire region between Mars and Earth became a field of invisible static. From the Empire's point of view, everything looked normal. Then slowly their scanners began showing impossible results. Planets seemed to move, asteroids changed course, and unknown signals appeared all around them. The Imperial commander frowned. "What is happening to our data?" His officers worked quickly. "Sir, it seems our long-range sensors are being disrupted by an interference field. But it's impossible. No primitive planet can generate this much distortion." The commander stared at the hologram of Earth. "Then explain it." No one could. From Earth, a single transmission was sent toward the approaching fleet. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even a warning. It simply read, "You are being observed. Do not proceed." The Empire ignored it. They assumed it was an act of desperation, a last message from a doomed planet. The commander raised his hand. "Prepare the first wave. Target their orbital stations and surface cities. End this quickly." As soon as his order was given, the first line of Imperial warships activated their weapons. Energy cannons charged, glowing like tiny suns. In the void of space, thousands of beams prepared to strike. But before they could fire, the lights inside every ship flickered. One by one, the targeting systems shut down. Screens went dark. Engines stuttered. For a few seconds, the fleet floated helplessly in silence. Then power returned. But the aim systems were completely misaligned. None of the weapons could find their targets. Confusion spread. Officers shouted commands, engineers ran diagnostics, and the commander demanded answers. "Why are the weapons offline?" "Unknown interference, sir." "We're detecting energy patterns we've never seen before." What the Empire didn't realize was that Earth had activated a defense grid hidden across the solar system. It wasn't just made of weapons, it was made of knowledge. Humans had learned how to use electromagnetic fields to distort technology, to scramble signals, and to blind enemy sensors. The Empire's ships, for all their power, had never faced such unpredictable tactics. In the command centers on Earth, people watched quietly as the first phase succeeded. Someone whispered, "They can't see us." The Earth defense leaders gave no cheers, no applause. They simply moved to the next step. "Begin countermeasures," the main operator said. From the moon's shadow, hundreds of small drones emerged, invisible to normal sensors. They spread across space, releasing waves of coded signals designed to confuse and misdirect the Imperial fleet even more. To the Empire, it looked like hundreds of new ships had suddenly appeared around them. Alarms filled their control rooms. "Multiple enemy contacts. We are surrounded." But when they tried to fire, their weapons refused to lock on. The enemy signals kept vanishing before impact. Inside the flagship, frustration turned into anger. The commander slammed his hand on the console. "This is nonsense. They're using tricks, illusions. Destroy something, anything." The fleet opened fire, launching energy blasts across the void. But every beam missed. Some even hit their own ships by mistake. The formation broke apart as confusion spread. On Earth, people held their breath. The Empire's fleet had finally revealed its weakness, not its weapons, but its arrogance. The more the Empire fired, the worse the chaos became. Their own energy pulses were bouncing back at them, creating a storm of light in space. The commander ordered the fleet to regroup, but communication lines were already failing. Each ship was alone now, cut off from the others by interference. And then something unexpected happened. One of the Imperial ships simply vanished from the readings. There was no explosion, no wreckage, just silence. Then another ship disappeared, and another. The commander's voice trembled as he demanded, "Report! What's happening to our vessels?" No one could answer. From Earth's orbit, hidden defense platforms continued their silent work. They weren't destroying the enemy in a violent blast. They were shutting down their systems completely, one ship at a time. The technology used was beyond anything the Empire had imagined. It attacked not the hull, but the very energy core of each ship, rendering it lifeless. To those watching from other worlds, the battle seemed impossible to understand. One moment, the Empire's mighty armada was approaching Earth. The next, it began to vanish into silence. Within minutes, half the fleet was gone. The rest tried to retreat, but their engines refused to respond. Their own systems no longer obeyed their commands. The commander looked out into the endless dark. For the first time in his career, he felt fear. "This is not war," he whispered. "This is something else." He tried to send a message back to the Emperor, but the transmission failed. The communication networks were blocked completely. Even the Empire's strongest signals could not escape the field surrounding the solar system. On Earth, the defense team watched the results. One of the younger operators asked softly, "Should we stop them? Or finish it?" The leader looked at the screen where the Empire's massive fleet was now breaking apart in confusion. "They declared this war," he said quietly. "They thought we would beg for mercy. Let them see who we are." And with that, Phase 2 began. Energy pulses invisible to the naked eye spread across the space between Earth and the Empire's ships. One after another, the giant vessels lost power, their lights fading into darkness. There were no explosions, no sound, no debris, only silence. In less than an hour, the Empire's proud armada was gone. Thousands of ships, the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, had been erased from the void as if they had never existed. Across Earth, no one celebrated. People stood in silence, watching the data feeds, realizing what they had done. Humanity had not just defended itself, they had changed the balance of the galaxy forever. And as the last Imperial ship faded from the screens, a single message was sent into the stars. It was calm, clear, and final. "This is Earth. The war is over." Then, like the stillness after a storm, there was nothing but quiet. The Empire had come with arrogance and power. They had expected an easy victory, but in a single moment, they learned the one truth the galaxy had always ignored. Never underestimate a world that fights for its home. And somewhere beyond the stars, in the silence that followed, the universe began to whisper about a small blue planet that stood against an empire and survived. After the Empire's fleet disappeared, silence filled the void. Not the quiet of emptiness, but the heavy, charged silence of shock. For countless worlds, the sudden vanishing of thousands of ships was impossible to comprehend. Entire civilizations paused to witness the event through their distant sensors, struggling to make sense of what they saw. On Earth, no one cheered. There was no celebration, no music, no banners waving. People were still standing, breathing, listening, and watching. They had done something beyond belief, something that the galaxy would never forget. Every screen in the command centers displayed the same truth. The Empire's armada, its pride, its power, its history, was gone. The world had survived. Humanity had not just resisted, they had overcome an enemy thought to be unstoppable. Even though people understood what had happened, the moment was too vast, too strange, to immediately feel real. Scientists stared at the data, checking it repeatedly. Engineers reran simulations. Pilots who had prepared to face the Armada's fire couldn't believe that they hadn't even had to launch. The disappearance of the Imperial fleet wasn't destruction in a traditional sense. It was more than that. It was as if the ships had been erased, removed from existence in a single, impossible instant. In underground command centers, the leaders gathered quietly. No one spoke at first. Then one of the senior operators said softly, "They're gone. All of them. Every ship, every system gone." The room remained silent for a moment longer. Then another voice, calmer but filled with wonder, added, "Not destroyed, gone, as if they never existed." The truth slowly began to sink in. Humanity had not only defended itself, but it had done so in a way that no other civilization had ever imagined. The power to survive, the intelligence to protect, and the courage to act as one. This combination had achieved what centuries of galactic warfare could not. Far away, on other worlds, the news spread like wildfire. Imperial colonies loyal to the Emperor scrambled to understand what had happened. Communications were chaotic. Many could not believe their own readings. Historians, strategists, and generals pored over the data, trying to find a reason and explanation for the disappearance of the fleet. Theories spread, some claiming Earth had discovered a weapon of unimaginable power. Others suggested divine intervention. Many refused to believe the human race could accomplish such a feat. But humans didn't concern themselves with speculation. They had survived, and now the next step was clear: ensuring their planet and their species remained safe. The Earth Defense Initiative immediately shifted focus. They began monitoring the surrounding systems for any signs of remaining Imperial activity. Satellites and observation drones swept across nearby space, searching for anything that might have survived. Hidden bases and orbital platforms stayed alert, prepared to react at a moment's notice. Humanity had learned that survival depended on constant vigilance even in moments of triumph. Meanwhile, ordinary people across the globe began to notice the change in the skies. The stars seemed sharper, clearer. Space was quiet, almost peaceful. Yet even this calm carried an unspoken message. Something powerful had happened. Something that no one fully understood. Humanity had touched the edge of the impossible, and lived. In cities, towns, and villages, people stepped outside and looked up at the night sky. Many had spent their lives imagining what contact with the Empire would be like, always fearing invasion. Now the sky felt different, not threatening, not distant, but alive with possibility. A quiet pride spread among humans. They had faced fear itself and had survived. The leaders of Earth, however, remained cautious. They knew that the galaxy had taken notice, and that not every civilization would welcome humanity's victory. Diplomacy, careful observation, and continued preparedness became the new priorities. Humans had won the first battle without a single shot fired in anger. But they also understood that the universe had changed. Every species capable of reaching the stars now looked at Earth differently. Even within the United Nations of Earth, discussions shifted. The victory was not just military, it was cultural, scientific, and moral. Humanity had proven that size, age, and numbers were not the ultimate measures of strength. Determination, unity, and ingenuity mattered just as much. In one of the largest command rooms, an older scientist looked at the main display, showing the void where the Empire's fleet had vanished. She spoke quietly, almost to herself. They underestimated us. They thought we were weak, disorganized. But we are not just survivors. We are creators, thinkers, and fighters, and they never saw it coming. Her words resonated with everyone in the room. They had been part of something historic. Not because of technology alone, but because humanity had chosen to act as one. Every engineer, technician, and soldier had played a role. Every individual contribution had created a collective force strong enough to challenge an empire. Beyond Earth, alien species began to report strange observations. Ships that had been monitoring the invasion had recorded anomalies in the energy readings near the solar system. Some claimed that the very laws of physics seemed to bend near Earth, influenced by systems or strategies that humans had developed. The galaxy slowly realized that the humans had discovered something new. Not a weapon that simply destroyed, but a method that controlled the battlefield without violence. The news of Earth's power spread quietly at first. Traders, explorers, and diplomats whispered the tales to each other. Stories of the vanished fleet traveled faster than light, carried on signals and messages across many star systems. They did not speak of fear alone. They spoke of a species that had grown beyond what was expected. On Earth, life returned slowly to normal. The streets were still filled with people, children still played, and cities hummed with daily activity. Yet beneath the surface, a new awareness had taken hold. Humanity now understood its potential. They had survived the impossible, and with that survival came responsibility. In classrooms, teachers used the events as lessons, not in war, but in perseverance, unity, and the importance of knowledge. In laboratories, scientists continued their research, understanding that every discovery now carried a new weight. Every invention, every calculation could someday protect the planet again. At the same time, humanity reached out quietly into space. Observers and communications teams scanned nearby systems, making peaceful contact where possible. They were careful not to provoke fear unnecessarily, but their signals were clear. Earth had changed, and it would no longer be ignored. Across the planet, ordinary people felt a renewed sense of identity. They had faced something that many thought was beyond comprehension. Their ancestors had survived plagues, wars, and disasters. Now they had survived an empire. It was not just a victory. It was a statement about the strength and resilience of the human spirit. In the weeks that followed, Earth's leaders maintained a careful watch. They rebuilt infrastructure that had been prepared for conflict, strengthened communication networks, and expanded observation posts in space. They also ensured that society remained stable. Victory had not brought arrogance. It had brought reflection. Humanity knew the universe had seen its power, and with that recognition came responsibility. For the first time in recorded history, humans looked at the stars not with fear, but with confidence. They knew the Empire could not reach them now, yet the galaxy was full of unknowns. There were civilizations they had never met, systems they had never studied and phenomena that no human mind fully understood. The war had ended, but humanity's journey among the stars was just beginning. Even in the calm that followed, whispers of the event circulated in secret. Many speculated about the techniques Earth had used to make the fleet vanish. Some feared the power might be misused. Others wondered if humanity would one day face a test too great to survive. But one truth became undeniable. Earth had changed. The human race had proven itself capable of surviving against overwhelming odds, and that achievement would forever alter how the galaxy viewed them. In hidden observatories and laboratories, the story of that single moment, the moment the Empire's fleet disappeared, was studied repeatedly. Maps were redrawn, data was analyzed, and models were tested. Scientists realized that what had happened could not simply be replicated. It was not a weapon. It was strategy, combined with unity and ingenuity. From that day forward, humanity knew something else. The galaxy had learned to respect them, but humanity had also learned to respect itself. They were no longer just inhabitants of a single planet. They were protectors of a world that had survived the impossible. And somewhere in the quiet of night, as the people of Earth looked up at the stars, they felt the truth of what had happened. They had not only survived, they had rewritten what was possible. The Empire had come to conquer expecting an easy victory. Instead, it had vanished in a single moment. And in that moment, the universe realized that a small blue planet held a power no one had ever truly understood. A power born not from size or weapons, but from courage, unity, and the unyielding will to survive. Humanity had not just won a war. Humanity had changed the story of its own future, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The news of the Empire's fleet disappearing spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Worlds that had never spoken to each other watched in disbelief. Imperial colonies once loyal to the Emperor were thrown into confusion. The largest military powers in the galaxy could not explain what had happened. Thousands of years of history, thousands of worlds under one rule, and the Empire's pride, all seemed fragile now. On those colonies, leaders held emergency meetings. Generals shouted orders, council members debated, and advisors scrambled to find answers. But no one had them. How could a small, seemingly primitive planet erase their most powerful fleet in a single moment? Every report, every sensor reading confirmed the same impossible truth. The Empire's armada had vanished. Panic spread through the ranks. Soldiers who had believed victory was guaranteed now questioned everything. The colonies had relied on the Empire's strength, but that strength was gone. Communication networks that once connected the Empire in perfect order now fractured. Some governors ignored messages from the capital, declaring that they would make their own decisions. Others abandoned their posts entirely. Chaos rippled outward from the heart of the Empire, faster than any human fleet could have imagined. Even the Emperor, sitting in his golden palace on a distant world, felt fear for the first time in centuries. He had faced rebellions, uprisings, and rival empires, but never this. His pride and arrogance, which had always been his strongest weapons, now became weaknesses. Orders sent to fleets and colonies went unanswered. Reports of disappearing ships, failing weapons, and mutinies flooded in. The Emperor realized that the very structure he had built to control the galaxy was crumbling. Across the Empire, fear became contagious. Generals who had commanded thousands of ships began to doubt themselves. Scientists and engineers who had once perfected weapons of mass destruction now questioned their abilities. Colonies that had lived under imperial protection suddenly realized they were vulnerable. Some worlds declared independence immediately, choosing to distance themselves from a power they no longer trusted. Others waited, fearful of retaliation, unsure if humanity's victory was just a fluke or the beginning of a new era. Meanwhile, humans on Earth continued their quiet vigilance. They did not celebrate the Empire's collapse. They understood that victory in space did not mean the galaxy was now safe. Other civilizations might test them, curious, cautious, or even fearful. Earth's leaders kept their command centers active, their satellites scanning the void and their defense networks ready. Every day, humans learned more about the galaxy's reaction, and they realized that their moment of triumph had changed the rules of interstellar power. Scientists on Earth studied the fragments of communication left by Imperial fleets. They discovered a pattern. The Empire's collapse was not random. Their systems had failed in a chain reaction. Once the first few ships disappeared, the remaining ship systems could not cope. Panic spread through their networks, then through their colonies, and finally through their leadership. Humanity had not only defended itself, it had caused the Empire's collapse without firing a single shot. The galaxy watched in awe. Traders, explorers, and diplomats spread the story to other civilizations. Entire star systems began to whisper about the humans who had defeated an empire. Some viewed humanity as heroes. Others regarded them as a potential threat. But no one could deny the truth. Earth had achieved the impossible. Within the empire itself, factions began to form. Loyalists still defended the emperor, claiming that humanity's victory was a miracle and that the fleet could be rebuilt. Others argued that the emperor's time was over, that the very system he had built was fragile and had proven incapable of withstanding challenge. Rebellions erupted on multiple planets. Imperial governors and military leaders who had once followed orders without question now acted independently. On Earth, intelligence teams monitored these developments carefully. They realized that the collapse of the empire was not just a military event, it was a social and political one. The galaxy was in flux. Old alliances weakened, new ones began to form. Some civilizations approached Earth cautiously, wanting to learn from the humans. Others tried to assess whether Earth's power could threaten them as well. Humanity had not only survived, they had reshaped the balance of power across thousands of worlds. Amid all this, ordinary humans remained grounded. People went to work, schools continued, and life on the planet carried on. But beneath the surface, there was a quiet sense of pride and vigilance. Every individual understood that the survival of their species had changed the universe forever. Humanity had proven that intelligence, creativity, and unity could overcome even the most powerful force in existence. In the weeks that followed, scientists and engineers worked tirelessly to analyze every fragment of imperial technology that had been observed. They discovered advanced systems designed to coordinate fleets across light years, weapons capable of destroying entire worlds, and communication networks that could transmit across galaxies. Humanity had not only survived these systems, they had found ways to neutralize them. Military leaders on Earth used these lessons to strengthen their defenses. They realized that their victory was not just about offense or firepower. It was about understanding, predicting, and outmaneuvering a larger enemy. The humans had used their intelligence, creativity, and adaptability to survive. Now they had to ensure that those qualities were never wasted. The collapse of the empire had consequences far beyond space battles. Economies of countless worlds were disrupted. Trade routes collapsed. Political alliances that had once seemed unshakable were tested. Fear and uncertainty became common among civilizations that had once relied on the empire's protection. Humanity watched this transformation carefully, understanding that power in the galaxy now came from more than size or technology. It came from ingenuity, adaptability, and unity. On Earth, leaders emphasized caution and diplomacy. They sent emissaries to nearby systems, not to threaten, but to explain their intentions. They wanted to show that humanity's goal was survival, not domination, but they also made it clear that Earth would not be intimidated or controlled. The humans had learned the importance of balance, strength without arrogance, vigilance without fear. Historians and scholars on Earth began to record the events carefully. They understood that what had happened was unprecedented in galactic history. A civilization that had never fought among the stars had not only survived, but had also caused the collapse of a powerful empire. These lessons were not just for science, they were for culture, for philosophy, and for the human understanding of their place in the universe. As time passed, humans reflected on the moment of the empire's collapse. They realized that it had not been brute force that won the day, but the quiet strength of preparation, focus, and unity. Every engineer, scientist, pilot, and leader had played a role. Every ordinary person who continued life on Earth had contributed to a society capable of standing against the impossible. Beyond Earth, civilizations slowly adapted to the new reality. Some sought alliances with humans, hoping to understand their strategies and learn from them. Others distanced themselves, wary of a species that had demonstrated the ability to neutralize an empire without firing a single shot. The balance of power across the galaxy shifted, and it did so permanently. Meanwhile, humans continued their work quietly. They improved communication networks, strengthened planetary defenses, and advanced their understanding of the universe. They knew that other civilizations would be watching closely. They also knew that the galaxy was vast and unpredictable. Survival required constant vigilance, creativity, and unity. For the first time, humanity felt its full potential. They had faced a power older, larger, and stronger than anything in their history and survived. The victory was not celebrated with parades or ceremonies. It was felt quietly, deeply, in the hearts and minds of every person who understood that their species had changed the course of history. The Empire's collapse was complete. Its fleets gone, its colonies fractured, and its leadership in chaos. What remained was a galaxy that had been reshaped in a single moment. Humanity had not only survived, they had demonstrated a power that no other civilization could ignore. Even as the universe adjusted to this new reality, Earth remained grounded. Humans continued to live their lives, work their jobs, and raise their families. They knew that the future held unknown challenges. They understood that survival required more than technology or weapons. It required courage, unity, and intelligence. And somewhere in the vastness of space, civilizations whispered of the humans who had caused an empire to collapse. They spoke of a planet that had refused to bow, a species that had survived the impossible, and a future that had been rewritten in a single moment. Humanity had not only won, humanity had changed the galaxy forever. After the collapse of the Empire, the galaxy was quiet, but it was not calm. The disappearance of the Imperial fleet had changed everything. Worlds that once lived under fear and control now faced uncertainty. Borders that had seemed permanent shifted. Alliances that had seemed unbreakable fractured, and civilizations that had relied on the Empire's power questioned their future. Earth watched carefully. Humans did not rush into the chaos, nor did they act arrogantly. Instead, they chose observation first. The leaders of Earth understood that their survival had given them a unique position, but it was a position that carried responsibility. Humanity had demonstrated a power no one had ever imagined, but they also knew that the universe was vast, unpredictable, and full of unknown dangers. Diplomacy became a priority. For the first time in human history, the planet sent ambassadors to other star systems, not as conquerors, but as representatives of a species that had survived the impossible. Messages were sent through secure channels, carefully translated into alien languages, explaining that Earth's actions had been defensive, aimed only at protecting its people. The humans wanted to show that their strength was not meant for oppression, but for survival. Some civilizations responded with caution. They had observed the Empire's fall and the sudden disappearance of its fleet. They were curious, yes, but also wary. Humans were now seen as a force capable of reshaping galactic politics. Diplomats from other worlds asked questions about Earth's technology, its defense strategies, and its intentions. Humans answered honestly, carefully avoiding unnecessary details that could provoke fear or envy. Within Earth, life began to normalize, but with a new awareness. Citizens understood that the planet was now at the center of a universe that had changed forever. Children learned in schools not only about history, science, and art, but also about responsibility, unity, and resilience. Humanity had survived the impossible not because of weapons alone, but because people had worked together with intelligence, creativity, and courage. These lessons became central to every aspect of life. Scientists and engineers continued to develop new technologies, not for conquest, but for exploration and protection. Satellites and observation platforms scanned deep space for anomalies, while research teams studied the remnants of imperial designs. Every discovery carried a new weight. Humans had to understand the universe as fully as possible, not just for knowledge, but to ensure the planet's safety. Trade and communication networks with nearby civilizations slowly began to form. Some alien species, inspired by humanity's ingenuity and determination, offered cooperation. Others were skeptical, watching from afar, unsure whether humans could be trusted. Earth maintained patience, knowing that respect had to be earned over time. The collapse of the Empire also sent ripples across the galaxy's political landscape. Without a central authority, many worlds faced the choice of independence or alignment with other powers. Humans observed quietly, understanding that the lessons of unity they had learned on Earth could help guide diplomacy. Ambassadors emphasized that humanity's strength came from cooperation, not domination, and they offered examples of how diverse societies could work together to survive challenges. Even as humans reached out, Earth maintained its defenses. Space stations, hidden platforms, and orbital networks remained active, ready for any threats. Humans understood that survival required more than diplomacy. It required vigilance, readiness, and adaptability. History had taught them that the galaxy could be unpredictable. The memory of the Empire's arrogance, now erased, served as a reminder that preparation was as important as courage. Within human society, a new sense of identity emerged. People were proud, not in arrogance, but in understanding their collective achievement. Ordinary citizens who had lived through fear and uncertainty recognized that their contributions mattered. Engineers, scientists, doctors, teachers, pilots, and farmers, every role had played a part in humanity's survival. The unity that had protected the planet became a cultural cornerstone. Humanity also began exploring beyond the solar system. Small fleets of exploratory ships were launched, manned by scientists, engineers, and observers, not soldiers. These missions aimed to understand neighboring systems, establish communication with other civilizations, and study cosmic phenomena. Every step into space was careful, deliberate, and mindful of the lessons learned from the confrontation with the Empire. Some alien species approached Earth for cooperation. They were fascinated by humanity's strategy, adaptability, and resilience. Humans shared knowledge cautiously, emphasizing ethics, responsibility, and peace. Other civilizations watched silently, wary of a species that had demonstrated the ability to neutralize an empire without violence. Across the galaxy, humanity's reputation grew, not as conquerors but as survivors, thinkers, and protectors. On Earth, people reflected on what had happened. Survivors who had participated in the preparations and defense shared stories of courage, intelligence, and determination. Historians and writers documented the events carefully. They understood that these moments would shape the identity of the human race for generations. Humanity had not only survived the impossible, they had also set an example of unity, creativity, and courage that would inspire countless others. In the quiet of space, humans observed other civilizations beginning to adapt to the Empire's absence. Trade routes were reopened, alliances shifted, and new governments emerged. Some worlds were in chaos while others flourished. Earth offered guidance to those who sought it, demonstrating that diplomacy, patience, and cooperation were as powerful as any weapon. The collapse of the Empire also reminded humanity of its own fragility. People realized that their survival was not guaranteed, and that the galaxy contained forces that could challenge even the strongest civilizations. This awareness became part of education, policy, and cultural values. Humans learned that strength came not only from technology or intelligence, but also from ethics, empathy, and shared purpose. As the years passed, humanity's presence in the galaxy became more established. Communication networks linked with nearby star systems, observation platforms extended their reach, and exploratory missions continued. Humans maintained a balance of readiness and curiosity, ensuring that the lessons of the past guided every decision. The Empire's collapse also inspired art, literature, and philosophy on Earth. Artists created works reflecting resilience and unity. Writers explored the possibilities of courage, strategy, and adaptability. Philosophers debated the nature of strength, responsibility, and the human role in the universe. Humanity's victory had not only reshaped politics, it had reshaped culture and identity. In everyday life, people continued to live, work, and learn. Yet there was a shared understanding that Earth had survived something extraordinary. Children grew up hearing stories of how humans had faced an empire and won, not through aggression, but through preparation, intelligence, and unity. These lessons were carried forward, ensuring that future generations would understand the importance of courage, collaboration, and ethics. As Earth looked to the stars, the humans knew that their journey was just beginning. The galaxy was full of unknowns, dangers, and opportunities, but humanity had learned to face the impossible, to act together and to adapt. They had survived what no one else had, and they had emerged not just alive, but wiser, stronger, and more united. The lessons of the Empire's collapse echoed in every corner of human society. Governments focused on unity rather than division. Scientists continued to innovate responsibly. Military strategies emphasized protection rather than conquest. Education highlighted courage, ethics, and collaboration. Humanity had become a species capable of thinking beyond survival, capable of shaping its own destiny. And across the galaxy, whispers of Earth's triumph continued. Civilizations spoke of a small blue planet that had refused to bow, a species that had survived the impossible, and a future that had been forever altered by courage, intelligence, and unity. Earth had changed, and humanity had changed with it. The planet was no longer just a home. It was a symbol of resilience, hope, and possibility. Humans understood that power in the universe was not measured by size or weaponry, but by the will to survive, the ability to adapt, and the courage to act together in the face of the unknown. In time, Earth became a center of diplomacy, knowledge, and observation. Explorers traveled to nearby systems, scientists collaborated with other species, and humans shared their lessons cautiously and wisely. Every action reflected the understanding that survival had been earned, not given, and that the galaxy would always remember the day a small, determined species refused to be conquered, and so humanity entered a new era, one of vigilance, cooperation, and discovery. The Empire's shadow had been removed and the stars were open, but humans carried with them a deep understanding. The universe could be unpredictable, dangerous, and full of challenges. Success would depend on preparation, intelligence, unity, and the courage to face the unknown. In that new era, Earth thrived, not as a conqueror, but as a protector, a teacher, and a beacon. Humanity had survived the impossible, reshaped the galaxy, and discovered that the greatest power was not in weapons or fleets, but in the hearts, minds, and unity of ordinary people working together. The galaxy high,